you're jonesing for a new shaggin' wagon, but you're looking to go electric, believe it or not, you'll have some very solid and interesting options available soon. We've got a very early showdown here, two competitors from wildly different places, both lacing them up and getting ready to battle it out to be the king van thing in the EV world. So of course I'm talking about Volkswagen's upcoming ID.buzz. I mean, even if you're not a car guy, you've probably seen these prototypes already. Volkswagen is a behemoth. They've been making good cars for a very long time, and they're good at it. The other guy, well, you may not have heard of, and I'm talking about this pretty exciting startup called Canoo. They're pretty much brand new to the scene, but they're serious and they're doing lots of very interesting things. So yeah, quite a battle on our hands here. One we'll probably be revisiting several times in the future, but the rivalry has got to start somewhere, so why not here at Gearbox Pizza? So this will be a good time to also hit that sub button so you don't miss out in the next chapter of this bout. Alright, so straight up, we're sort of comparing prototypes, and we all know that both of these are gonna look a little different in their production form. Having said that, aside from maybe some bumpers, it really looks like Canoo's lifestyle vehicle will hopefully remain just pretty close to the version we've been seeing for a while now. Volkswagen, on the other hand, well, a little bit more of a question mark. It's not unlike VW or lots of the big boy automakers that get people all hooked on the awesome concept car, only to suck all the character out of it by the time it's engineered and production ready. Recently, there's been some sort of disappointing spy photos taken of the ID.buzz doing some cold weather testing. And look, I don't want to blow this out of proportion because none of us really know what's up with this thing. I mean, it could be wearing some fake body panels. I don't know. I mean, it could be a number of things. Anyway, and I know this is totally subjective, but there's just something about the Canoo that just, I don't know, just kind of speaks to me. I mean, it almost looks like it belongs exploring that red planet, right? I mean, look, now the ID.buzz prototype also looks pretty great, and if Volkswagen can bring this thing to market, well, look, we're gonna have two really stylish options here. And look, I'm not sure which one looks better than the other, and it's just gonna kind of come down to personal taste. I am just sort of digging the Canoo though, but if you're all about the buzz, look, you still got my respect. Oh, one thing to keep in mind, Canoo's also going to be making a flatbed version of this thing, so that's cool. We'll be talking a bit more about this later when we're looking at the hashtag van life specs. Interior wise, look, they both look great and are pretty customizable. The Canoo has this almost like restaurant booth layout, which I've never seen before. It's just pretty cool. But look, the ID.buzz is pretty damn sweet in the inside as well. So the front captain's chairs, they can spin around 180 degrees. And how about some wood floors for you? Oh, and check out these rails that allow you to move and add seats, tables, and I don't know, whatever else. Look. Alright, so chances are both these interiors may be significantly different when it comes to production, but I do think there's going to be no shortage of ways to customize the interior to just about whatever your liking may be. Oh, by the way, there's a great post on the Canoo Reddit group by a dude named Flightmaster. I'd urge you to go check it out. Anyway, he made a nice comparison that I like to quote. So, quote unquote, in terms of viewing space, I would say Canoo is more like a high ceiling loft surrounded by glass, and the Volkswagen Buzz is more like a nice regular 8-foot ceiling apartment with some windows. Well said, my man. Hope you don't mind that I borrowed it. Alright, so let's talk about motors. So layout wise, these two are very similar. They'll both be offered with a single motor rear wheel drive layout, as well as a more powerful and capable dual motor and all wheel drive version. And that's about where the similarities end. Let's look at the ID.buzz first. So you got the base single motor version. That thing's gonna make a relatively weak 200 horsepower. The dual motor version is gonna make a tad more. I mean, nothing crazy, about 300 horsepower, and maybe just a little bit more. It's respectable, I guess, and look, I get it. I mean, there's no way in the world the Love Bus should be all about flat out speed. It's just not his thing, and look, 300 horsepower should be more or less plenty to get around comfortably. It should be peppy. Okay, looking at the Canoo, things get a little bit more exciting, potentially. You see, the base rear-wheel drive model should make at least 300 horsepower and really should make upwards of like 350 when everything gets dialed in. What's really exciting though is the dual motor version. Yep, as you guessed, all-wheel drive, but now we're taking a huge jump up from the ID.buzz. How's 600 horsepower? Yep, 600. And it might actually make a little bit more. Another thing I think is worth pointing out is that, like, while the IDbuzz is most definitely a van and like it makes no apologies about it, the Canoo, especially in its adventure trim, well, like it's sort of feeling more like a plump SUV with a minivan body rather than a street van. I mean, we're looking at some extra ground clearance and just a meaner and tougher stance to it. Advantage Canoo here, definitely in the cojones department. All right, cool. So we've talked styling, we've talked power and all that fun stuff, but now we got to talk function, and specifically I'm talking about range, and this is a big one. As consumers slowly migrate from the dying and soon to be barren desert of the land of internal combustion engines to the new lush gardens of electrons, the little thing in the back of everybody's mind is, man, what do I do if I run out of juice? The imagination likes to paint the worst case scenarios here, but as somebody who's actually run out of juice, well, twice, it's never quite as bad as you think it is. But that advice will do very little to calm the great anxiety issue, right? So, in other words, how far can these things go? All right, let's start with the IDbuzz. So there's going to be a few battery options here. On the low end, we're looking at a 48 kilowatt hour battery that's most likely good for about 150 miles or so. And then on the high end, we're looking at a pretty girthy 110 kilowatt hour battery. It should be good for, I don't know, maybe like 275 miles, give or take. All right, real quick, Volkswagen has claimed the top end range of 340 miles on this thing, but like, this is important. That's based on the European cycle. That's, well, insanely optimistic and generally not even close to what your actual mileage is going to be. All right, with the Canoo, things are going to be a little bit simpler. There's only one battery available and it slots somewhere in the middle of what Volkswagen's offering. We're talking about a pretty solid 80 kilowatt hours, and that should be good enough for about 250 miles of range. If you end up getting that second motor though, by adding that extra weight, expect the range to drop just a little bit. All right, so the advantage probably goes to the IDbuzz here. If you really need as much range as you can get, well, Volkswagen with the 110 kilowatt hour battery is most likely going to be the range champ here. All right, so you're sold, yeah? And you're not sure what it is, but if you don't get yourself some electric van love soon, well, who knows what might happen. All right, so when can we get our filthy little mitts on one of these things? So Volkswagen is showing the world the production version of the IDbuzz in March, and production should start before the end of the year, but that's going to be primarily for Europe. It's not going to go on sale in the US until mid to late 2023, and that's as a 2024 model. All right, Canoo on the other hand, well, they're aiming to produce about 3,000 to 6,000 units before the year is over. Not a lot, I know, but in 2023, they're planning on making an additional 17,000. In 2024, production should hit about 40,000, and in 2025, they're looking to make 70,000 of these. All right, so who's got the advantage here? Well, it's complicated kind of, but Volkswagen might, you see. Volkswagen, well, they've been building cars forever, and they've been actually building EVs for a little while now too. They should have many of the kinks ironed out pretty well by now, and they have the factories and the know-how to sort of build vehicles well and fast if they need to. They have tons of resources at their disposal and might be better suited to ramp up production if needed. Now, this isn't to say that Canoo won't be able to meet or even exceed their internal goals. And for those of you lucky enough to be on the short list to get one, well, I'm a little jealous. Good on you, bro. But if you're just an average dude, a lot like myself, I'd bet it's going to be easier and quicker to get a hold of an IDbuzz. I'll tell you though, I would really love to be wrong here, and look, I suppose time's going to tell. So what if you're a flannel-wearing, beard-loving, red-blooded American that's looking for some hardcore outdoor adventure? Load up, venture off, just you, your lady friend, and maybe a pupper or two. Which one of these will meet your needs for a long weekend or maybe even months at a time? Well, I think it sort of depends on what exactly you plan on doing. Look, it's no secret that Volkswagen has been making camper vans for like 1,000 years, and they're pretty good at it. It's likely that the new version will retain many of those creature comforts that the previous models had. I mean, running water and a built-in stovetop, yeah, that's pretty nice. Look, if I was looking to spend any real amount of time in my van, if I was going to actually live out of it for a bit, then yeah, look, it's hard to beat the upcoming IDbuzz California, assuming they make it. It's just going to be really good, but there's a few potential issues. First, Volkswagen did not offer the previous generation version here in the States. Nope. So there's no guarantee that the new EV version is going to make it here either. We're all sort of guessing on this one, and although I think the odds are pretty decent that we'll get one, I mean, honestly, who knows? Oh, and this is a serious conversion, so it's really anybody's guess as to when Volkswagen would actually get around to building any of these. So yeah, I mean, it could be years. I mean, hopefully not, but yeah, it could be. Now with the Canoo, well, you got some options. I'm sure there's going to be a YOLO van life thing happening here, but don't expect the same creature comforts as you'd get with the Volkswagen. There are some options though. Do you stick with the adventure trim van, or do you opt for the pickup with the camper shell? Yeah, maybe the pickup was a better choice here, but we'll have to see. With this market growing, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of aftermarket options that'll be able to turn your Canoo into just about whatever you need it to be. Then again, look, we'll have to see. All right, so I think it comes down to this. If you're going to be traveling and more or less living out of your vehicle for a while, or staying mostly on the pavement for the most part, well, it's going to be hard to pass up the IDbuzz. But if you're looking to really get out there, do some off-roading, find some interesting camping spots for a long weekend or what have you, well, I think the Canoo gets the nod here. Okay, so time to talk price. So Canoo has announced some pricing, but there's just not that much info available, so we're gonna have to make some guesses on some things. The IDbuzz, on the other hand, well, there's like no pricing available whatsoever. Anyway, Canoo is advertising a starting price at just under 35 grand, and I'm sure that's for the bottom level delivery van version. There's 3 trims to upgrade from there. We've got the base trim, which is basically, gives you this rear interior that's suitable for people, along with some nicer wheels and a few color choices. Then there's the premium that ups the interior even more to accommodate 7 people, along with a giant glass roof among some other things. And lastly, there's the adventure trim that's sort of the top dog. Looking at all these different trims and potential motor options, it's really impossible to say which one is going to be a better value. We're gonna have to wait a bit here, and I don't want to speculate too much. Look, I think you'll be able to get a decent version of each for under 50 grand, and I'm betting the top trim decked out versions of each of these could fetch north of 60 grand or maybe even 70 grand. Which is kind of nuts, but man, have vehicles gotten expensive, like stupid expensive, or is it me? I mean, it's crazy. All right, so where does this leave us? Well, it's pretty rad that we've got both of these options, and we'll have to wait until March to see what the Volkswagen is actually gonna look like, but my heart's with Canoo on this one. What can I say? Look, to me, it's just cooler looking in a masculine way. With the right spec, it'll have some real off-road chops. Styling wise, I'm just kind of drawn to it. Look, it's not to say the Volkswagen isn't great. It might ultimately make more sense, buying a vehicle from an already established company with a robust dealer network, yada yada. And there's a lot to be seen about with Canoo. Can they ramp up production? Can they keep quality on point? Or how are they going to address maintenance? The bottom line though is people buy vehicles that trigger an emotional reaction. Cars that make you feel good or look good or remind you of something. When you get a new car and you parked it somewhere and you just can't help but kind of turn around and look at it a few times as you're walking away. I mean, look, we don't use spreadsheets to buy cars because of this, and what can I say? The Canoo is just kind of awesome.